Okie dokie. If you live in California, you probably already know about this, but this is interesting. Gavin Newsom has decided to veto a segment of reparations bills that have come his way. Now, for those who are not aware, reparations task force was started in California a couple years ago, and they have been very active about getting this accomplished. Now, some people will look at this and they would say California didn't have any slaves. That's actually false. Remember, slaves were considered property. Slaves were sold. So slaves went around the country, and there were plantation owners that took slaves from the South and brought them to California as well. Now, a lot of Black voters are looking at Gavin Newsom and they're just kind of like, really? And whether you support it or not, I do support reparations. I think it's quite interesting that he did decide to do something for a particular group, and I will show you who that is. And he did this recently. So it's not about not wanting to give what is owed, that debt that's owed to descendants of slavery. It's about helping certain people and not helping others. Let's go ahead and get into this video here, ladies and gentlemen. This was before the veto.
Reparations are so important because it rights the wrong that we were treated in terms of coming here as slaves to this country, and how we were treated, the worst of the worst kind of slavery that you can have can happen to an individual. We were not even treated as humans. We were property.
And why the time for action is now.
This report, it's evidence-based, it's data-driven, it has the facts, it's not emotional.
History, both national and local, is important, and at the heart of this conversation, California was not a slave state, but more than 4,000 enslaved people were brought to California between 1850 and 1860 alone, typically by plantation owners to work in gold mines and more. Despite California being established as a free state, there's a history of mistreatment of groups and people, from Japanese internment camps in the 1940s, in which those mistreated received a total of $4 billion in reparation payments, to the 1937 anti-Okie law, which made it illegal to bring a, quote, indigent person to the state.
It's just, and to bring something up here, because a lot of people don't know about that. Yes, reparations were paid to Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps, and their descendants also received cash payments. That was signed into law by Ronald Reagan. A lot of people are not aware of that. When we talk about reparations, we're talking about a debt that is owed. There was 40 acres and a mule that was promised to freed men at that point in time and their descendants. Some of that started to happen, and then it was stopped by Andrew Jackson. So that has not been fulfilled. So because this is not being entertained on the national level, some of the states have decided to start their own task force to talk about the wrongs and the harms that happen in their states, and California is one of them. Now, I bring this up to say this. Gavin Newsom, who was out there telling everybody to go vote for Kamala Harris in 24, the reparations activists had the number of votes that were needed to get this passed. The legislators in the House decided at the last minute not to do it because Gavin Newsom didn't want to sign it. Those activists said to their faces, you guys better make sure that this happens, or we will make sure that your friend, Miss Kamala Harris, does not win that presidency. And here we are. Now, obviously, it goes by electoral college, but California was pretty much on path to be the first state to get this done. And a lot of people point to slavery. It's not just about slavery. It's all the other things that happened after that, right? So listen to this part here, and then I'll get into what Gavin Newsom did.
It's a place where many of the first pioneers of San Diego are buried.
This is San Diego's Mount Hope Cemetery. Yvette Porter-Moore, a local genealogist, wanted to meet us here. And that when we asked her why, she said this is her favorite place to visit because of all of the history that lives here.
Nathan Harrison was buried in this location in 1920. However, he did not have a headstone. It was an unmarked grave. But there was a gentleman who was a historian. He was doing some research, and he located where Nathan Harrison was buried.
Yvette says Harrison is a good example of how systemic racism over the years impacts the lives of Black people in California and the nation.
During the time that Nathan Harrison came to San Diego, he homesteaded on the property of Mount Palomar. And during this time, a lot of African Americans did not own property, but this man did. And because of the color of his skin and who he was not able to pass on his, his land to his descendants.
According to
homes that were stolen. Now, see, this is something, and look, there are things that happen in California. A lot of people know about what happened down south, but when my documentary comes out, you're going to see what happened in Boston and what's still happening here in Boston, which, again, people say we have this so-called progressive mayor. People don't realize just how racist Boston is. So we'll get into all of that. But Gavin Newsom, who apparently may be pursuing a 2028 presidential run, is going to need support from Black voters if he's running through the Democratic Party, which he obviously is most likely going to do that. Gavin Newsom, who is related to Nancy Pelosi, I'm not sure if everyone's aware of that. So we're talking about a political dynasty here. He's related to her by marriage. His name has kind of been thrown in the hat as someone who could run and possibly win in 2028. But see, they do things like this, and then they want to come for your vote. And then when Black people don't show up, then they be like, why'd y'all stay home, right? Look at this. Newsom rejects bills providing benefits to slavery descendants. Gavin Newsom vetoed bills that would have provided tangible benefits to those descendants, though he approved a state agency to determine who qualifies for potential reparations. And what did I tell you guys about this before? Agencies and studies, it's a cop-out. I told you before, oftentimes when these things are created, nothing really materializes from it that's really going to impact people's lives. But Gavin Newsom has no problem trying to materialize things to implement other lives. I'm going to show you who he decided to do something for. And this is the point that I like to bring up here. It goes on here to say in 2020 was when California started the first reparations task force. The movement towards reparations in the state slowed as state leaders had decided whether to spend actual tax dollars on tangible benefits, and as the public remains opposed to providing compensation. Newsom, a Democrat, signed legislation this month to create a state agency that would determine who qualifies as a descendant of slavery. But he vetoed measures that would have given descendants preference in college admissions, home loan assistance, and restitution for property seized in past years by the government through eminent domain. This still happens today, where homes are taken from Black people via eminent domain. I covered a story about it a year ago, an elderly woman in South Carolina who had a house that has been in her family for generations, and they were coming to take her land and her home. So you'll see this when we show the documentary. We're going to do a watch party for the documentary. You'll see the homes that were taken from Black people right here in Boston via eminent domain. And so Gavin Newsom is like most Democrats, where it's like they want the Black vote, but they don't actually want to do anything tangible for the Black community. Every other group is able to make demands for their vote. I saw it with the Dreamers, right? We see it with the Dreamers. We've seen it with the Latino community. We see it with the Jewish American community. Everybody else makes these demands. But in particular, when it comes to the Black voting base, the Democratic Party is not willing to move in any way, shape, or form to meet the demands of the Black community. They would rather lose than actually meet our demands. let's go on a little bit further here. I do want to also show you what Dr. Sandy Darity, he said here as well. That's going into, here we go. Newsom may have less political motivation than he did before as he weighs the possibility of running for president in 2028. A majority of Americans oppose taxpayer-funded reparations, and the nation as a whole is more conservative than California. And this is why some states decided to start their own task force here because of that, right? Governor Westmore in Maryland decided also to veto it, and he's Black. And then Gavin Newsom decided to veto it, right? So let's get into the part here from Dr. Sandy Darity. So Dr. Sandy Darity has done the research. He goes on to say he's behaved like most Democratic Party politicians, which is to some degree evade making a full commitment to reparations. Again, that's coming from William Darity, Duke University professor. Mr. Newsom has done more than any other politician by signing the bill that created the new state agency, Dr. Darity said, and that's somewhat telling, he said with a chuckle. Dr. Darity believes that it is financially impossible for the state and local governments to implement reparations. And this is true. I interviewed Dr. Sandy Darity on my show about a year or two ago, and I asked him about the local measures to pursue this. And Dr. Darity said that the states don't have the money to pay the debt that is actually owed, right? So again, he looks at numbers and economy and all those types of things. So he feels this should be done on a national level, not via the states. But the point is this: Gavin Newsom, he moved kind of funny, because see, come 2028, he's going to need Black voter support in order to win. The Democratic Party, you can't win without the Black vote. That's just a reality. He's not running as a Republican. And then people, they may remember this. Now, Gavin Newsom, about a year ago, he issued a public apology and said, we apologize for what happened in California. But when it comes to other groups, Gavin Newsom has been willing to bend over backwards. And this is the complaint that you hear a lot of people have. In fact, just recently, when you watch him squirm here, everybody take note to this, because Gavin Newsom was recently questioned about AIPAC, and this is important when you see who he decided to just help. He was on Higher Learning here with Van Lathan. Listen to this.
Interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC. And it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting. Why did I say that? Not relevant to my day-to-day life.
Okay.
Which is just interesting.
Listen.
It's interesting you say that. JPAC perhaps more, but AIPAC less and less.
Okay. Fair enough.
Which is just interesting.
What's interesting about it?
That it's just interesting as you bring up AIPAC that it hasn't been part of. I'm just reflecting quite openly and honestly. Hasn't been part of the day-to-day.
Yeah. The only reason why I ask is because with that, what I'm talking about is lobbying in and of itself.
So Gavin Newsom felt that it was interesting that AIPAC was mentioned, even though we've been talking about AIPAC for years, and it's been more prevalent in the spotlight since October 7th, where more and more people have been talking about AIPAC. It's just interesting, just interesting. Here's why he was kind of dodging that, right? So peep this, fam. Look at who he decided to help. Governor Gavin Newsom has signed legislation making California the first state in the nation to establish a statewide anti-Semitism prevention coordinator to oversee all K through 12 public schools. The measure was driven by the Jewish Public Affairs Committee of California, a robust lobbying network often described as the state-level counterpart to AIPAC. That's why he was, a little squishy. It's interesting. Interesting. That's why he was like that. So again, when it came to us, he's like, oh, yeah, we'll establish a state agency and just keep it moving. But he can move hell and high water to help other groups. This is what a lot of Black people have been pointing out. This is what we've been saying. So there you go. You see how quickly some of these politicians can move when it comes to helping other groups of people. The moment Black people start making demands, best we can do is create an agency. Let's create a study. Because they support the supremacist. Gavin Newsom, you got to. If you support Israel, if you support Zionism, you support supremacy. And that's what Gavin Newsom supports. And the reality is, and I said this before, when the white minority is prioritized, we are not prioritized. So if you pay attention to what is happening in corporate media, the way that is talked about is, oh, we got to make sure certain people feel safe and all this kind of stuff. Look who they prioritize. They don't talk about us that way. They don't talk about us like that. They don't care enough to. You don't know, never hear them say, we got to make sure that the Black people feel safe. They don't care. I don't even think CNN will even go that far. But you see who they prioritize. So everybody pay attention, because see, this is my point when I said before, when people get mad because Black people don't want to come out and support, now you see why. Because you can't keep doing that to people. You can't keep doing that to Black people and still expect them to come out and give you your vote. Everybody should look at 2024 exit poll results. That should have been a wake-up call for the Democratic Party. But you guys want to continue to just push Black people to the side, but you want to do something for everybody else. Why you can't do it for everybody? Like that's my thing. We are not a priority, but our vote is a priority to them. And that is why I continue to tell people, register as an independent. You don't owe these parties nothing. Nothing. So when you see people bring up Gavin Newsom for president for 2028, make sure you mention that to them and make sure you ask the right question. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.